week commencing 9th of April weekly blog on recording process. This week I started on the guitars and actually finished the guitars recording. As you can see here, I have GRL and GRR, which means guitar, rhythm, left and right. And I have the lead as well, so that's the GL and GLR. As you can see, the channels are panned left and right, but in the recording you won't hear that because I'm using a mono output. So first I started with the rhythm for the left side because that has more on it. For example, here, where I've just dragged this, you can see that this is actually the first verse of the track. So the guitar has palm muted sections here. Now, when I was recording this guitar track, I couldn't actually find a sound that I was happy with in Guitar Rig. So I ended up using Logic's own plugins after I'd watched a video on YouTube that about a modern guitar / gent tone for Logic plugins, so it uses only Logic plugins. As you can see here on this first channel, I'll give you a small preview. Watching this video, it showed me the tone that I wanted because I knew that the sound that I was looking for doesn't have high amounts of gain. It's quite clear and crisp and yet still distorted. As you can see here on the pedal board, I have the Double Dragon Deluxe Overdrive. I've turned the drive / gain all the way down and level all the way up. The tone I've pulled down to about 34, 35-ish, and I'm basically using this pedal as a boost because I find that even in the real world as well, and in the video they also had the same view as me, that sometimes a overdrive set like this, even in the real world, can sound better than an actual boost or compressor. As you can see here, it has a graphic EQ kind of dropping off at certain, kind of dropping off the bass slightly, and it should have a slight midpoint there. I boost the level again to give the amp even more signal, which then also enriches the overdrive of the amp as well. You can see here that the bass frequencies are kind of cut off, but the higher you go in frequencies, the higher they get, as such, until you get to treble when it's all flat. This is because with the tone that I have already, you can hear that it doesn't have a lot of definition. Just for comparison completely, this is without the Double Dragon, so this would just be the amp. You can hear that it's not as powerful and almost crisp and clear, but when we put the Deluxe Dragon on, it just kind of brings out the higher end slightly. I'll just go back to this bit, and then you can hear that there's a lot of low end, and the low end isn't necessarily clear in the track. So I put this graphic EQ on, like shown in the video, and you can hear that when I go down to the lower chords, because I'm in B standard compared to the standard E standard, it's a lot lower, and so there's a lot more bass. But by putting this graphic EQ with this setting on it, it just clears up the tone entirely, and so you don't have a lot of bass end, and it works well with the bass. It kind of gives the bass frequencies to the bass, so you can hear each instrument clearly. You can tell what instrument is playing what, and it's not a very muddy noise. I tried to make it as high quality as possible. I didn't want to have kind of like the old school black metal tone, where it was really lo-fi, kind of one mic in one room. So on the amp, I used exactly the same settings as what the video showed, apart from on the cabinet I moved the mic slightly off the cap of the speaker. So here you can see the gain is relatively high, but it's still quite clear. The bass is on 5, and the video shows that the mid and treble should be on 5, but I found that if I push them up, it gives even more clarity. The presence is on 0. I'm not 100% sure what the presence does, but I felt like when listening to it with presence on, it again made it more muddy. The master is pretty much all the way up. It's somewhere between 8 and 9 on the dial. As you can see, I'm using the brown head and the modern British 4x12. Now, if I turn this amp off, so you just have the pedals that were previously shown, it sounds still fairly clean. It sounds almost like a clipping DI. But if we were to turn that off, this is the sound of the DI. So you can hear there is a small piece of clipping, and if I turn the main compressor off, it'll get louder. And then if I just put the amp on again, you can hear that it's not as pronounced as it is with the pedal board. You can't like clearly make out each note, as it were, and the low end seems quite wide and broad. When you put the pedal board in, you can hear that it brings out the higher end and kind of tightens and neatens the lower end. And so when you have a track on the left and a track on the right, of course you won't be able to hear it, but it just makes it a lot thicker. For me, it's almost more pleasurable to listen to, because it's a thicker sound. It doesn't sound weak or anything. So this is just the guitar left, and when we put the guitar right, you can hear that it's quite a lot stronger. Now, that's it for the rhythm section. As you can hear, that's what it sounds like altogether. Now, for the lead, I used exactly the same guitar tone for both sides, just like the rhythm channels. But I just played the lead over it, and so this is the lead line that I created with a lot of inspiration from Paint Me Red by Avatar. As you can hear there in that harmonized part, I always used to like listening to Iron Maiden when they used to have a little kind of fill. They would harmonize because of having 3 guitarists. Of course, I only have 2 for this project. I really wanted to put the harmonized part in there. I thought it would kind of give another level, and you can definitely tell that the lead is there. All together again, this is what it sounds like with the drums in. So I find that with just the guitar it is still quite weak, even though you have 2 rhythm and 2 lead. I find it still quite weak, and it doesn't have the lower end. And of course, I wanted to keep that just for bass, so you didn't have a muddy guitar tone and then just kind of a bass underneath that no one could recognize. So next week I hope to record the bass. I will try and find certain tones in my research, you I will probably show my bass tone research on my blog, on my research blog for the song. But I shall hopefully record the bass next week.